Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this weekly series in which we interview guests who are experts in subject matters that are of interest to higher education, to academia, and to our students and faculty and staff at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. My name is Jorge Silva-Puras. I'm the Dean at the School of Professional Studies, which is one of 25 colleges and campuses within the City University of New York system. And today we're very fortunate to have Professor Peter Kowalczuk joining us. I hope I pronounce your last name somewhat correctly, Peter.
Yes, perfect, perfect.
Excellent, excellent. Well, welcome, Peter. It's great to have you. And today we have a really interesting episode in which we will be discussing AI and particularly how AI can help us be more efficient, more effective in our jobs, in our academic careers, but also in different aspects of how we develop content. So, Peter, I would love to start, as I typically do, with a little bit of background on yourself. Can you maybe tell us a little bit of your story, how you got interested in this subject? What has been your trajectory?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a professor at CUNY. I'm also a student. So I did the MSDS program, the Masters in Data Science, and that's really what got me not knee deep, but neck deep on AI and ML analytics and all of that. My trajectory is a little bit different. I did get an undergraduate degree in double E. In one of my last courses was in AI. This is back in the early 90s. So the
Double EB
world
in electrical engineering for those who are
electrical
not.
engineering,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So the world was a little bit different back then. I did learn programming from an early age, so I always had a knack for working with computers. But my professional career started in the oil and gas industry. I did end up doing a lot of data analysis,
Hmm.
as some of you might know. We collect a lot of information when we drill a well, when we plan a field, when we produce a reservoir. So I spent many, many years looking at data, looking at numbers. I'm not great at math, but I like playing with computers. So I was always writing a script, writing a program, writing something. And I eventually got an MBA from a university here in Texas. I'm in Houston. I've been in Houston for a while now. And what I liked more about there was not so much the HR piece or the management piece itself, but it was really more, again, looking at numbers from a programming scripting perspective. And eventually I got as I said, the master's at CUNY. And from there I
How
jumped.
long ago was that, Peter, that you did
I
your master's?
started the master's in 2018, finished just before the pandemic.
Okay.
But the master's really was that last step that I had to take to jump from energy specific to more of a tech career. So it was during my time at CUNY that I jumped over. Work now for Microsoft. I've been here almost 4 years now. Um,
Excellent. So you've been with Microsoft all the time in their Houston office, or you've been moving around, or?
yeah, so I moved over just and the pandemic hit just a few months later. So I've been stationed in Houston. I was assigned to a project in Houston, but ever since I've moved from one team to another, always working remote. My team actually is in Israel at the moment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And you said you are also teaching at CUNY SBS.
Correct.
What course or courses are you teaching,
Yeah,
and at
I'm
what level?
currently on IS 350, which is a course in the undergraduate program. I might be teaching something in the master's as well. But the course that I'm looking at right now is systems design. So we look
Hmm.
a little bit at the different technologies that we use in information systems from different vendors. We don't Obviously, I'm not concentrated just on Microsoft. We look at some of
You're a
the
bit biased, but not
systems.
completely biased, is what you're saying.
Correct. Yeah.
Very good. So you're teaching in the undergraduate information systems Bachelor of Science that we offer,
Hmm.
which, by the way, for those who don't know in the audience, it's a fully remote, fully online program. So we have students from all over the U.S. And professors from all over the U.S. like Peter in Houston. So that's great. And we'll at some point get back to the topic of recommendations that you might have for students in the program and in other areas. But let's jump into the topic that we agreed we would discuss in some length today, which is generative AI and how it can be used to facilitate our work or to help us improve in terms of efficiencies. There are obviously pros and cons. We have been hearing a lot since last November when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. But maybe you can give us a little bit of perspective in terms of the sector, because we hear about ChatGPT, but there are AI applications that are also producing visuals, video, photography, graphics. There are AI applications that do coding, some that do translations, and so on and so forth. And I imagine that's only the beginning.
Right.
I'm sure that a lot of startups are investing heavily in developing all different kinds of tools in AI. So maybe we can start, Peter, by giving an overview of
Right.
what is happening in the world of AI.
Yeah. So it's and I use this quote a fair bit, that sometimes you have decades in which nothing happens, and then sometimes you have weeks in which decades happen. And that's a little bit what's been going on in the field of AI, ML, even data analytics in general since late last year. Um, there has been, especially out in the media and everything else. There's many people that may have not considered AI as part of their daily life before end of last year, not realizing that actually AI has been around for quite a while. As I said, I started learning it in the early '90s. That there seemed to be a pause there, and then things started picking up in the 2000s as computing power became a lot easier. And a lot of that is happening right now. So with what's called generative AI or LLM, which stands for large language models, these are basically new techniques that, in a way, caught everyone by surprise. It wasn't all pre-planned that an LLM, these models, would be able to answer the questions that we're asking them, right? So a lot of that started in the NLP, which stands for National Language Programming, or Natural Language Programming, which is basically saying I'm programming a computer to be able to talk to me, interact with me with free text. That's the basis of what ChatGPT is. For those who haven't tried it out, I really recommend. It's a chatbot. You can ask questions and you'll always get answers back. And
Mhm.
that's where we have to be mindful, right? The models will never come back and say, "Hey, I don't know that answer." They're always going to give you an answer. Um, but from the a little bit of the trend is going even beyond that, right? So you mentioned imaging. So there are several models out there that have taken that a step further and have said, just like the models that are free text, look at, okay, if this person is asking me this question, what do I have in my body of knowledge that can answer that question? Some models also go, what is in my body, not of knowledge, but in my body of images? So they take vast amount of images and you type in um, some idea that you have for a rendering, and they would produce a rendering based on all of the information, all of those images that they have. And now we see it going even further to video, to even music, right?
So
Um,
I'm going to share on the screen the website for OpenAI for those who have not had the chance to use it, and I'm going to also show the link to their website. And one thing, without getting too technical, but one thing that I noticed is that Sam Altman, who's the chairman and president at OpenAI, has said that they do not make the code open source. They do offer an API, but do not make it open source, even though they're open AI. So I was wondering if you had some perspective for why go one way versus the other for.
sure. Yeah, there's actually LLM code and repos that source. Now, the interesting piece is that the models themselves, you want to keep you want to be a little bit more cautious on them. The techniques to build models,
Mhm.
that could be open sourced. It should be something that we should all learn from each other from. Um, the models themselves, you want to be cautious, right? You want to understand how was the model created, what information went into the model, and you want to understand how the model is used. So, on the commercial side of things, like Microsoft and Amazon and Google, we talk about this idea of responsible AI,
Mhm.
using AI for good in a way, or using AI responsibly, making sure that whatever you're using these models, those systems, they always have a back check, especially right now where the models keep changing a lot. At some point, we're going to see a plateau, but right now we're on the ramp up.
Mhm.
Um, we want to make sure that there's always a human in the loop, that the answers that you're getting back from models are not being using with any malice. That they're the applications in which the models are being used are suitable for the models themselves. So for that reason, it, everyone's a little bit cautious of that open source. Now, as I said, the techniques, the transformers, which is the the secret sauce of how these models are made, a lot of that is open source, and there's
Got
ways for people to build their own models if you have the time and the computing power, or the money to spend on the computing power.
Talking about new models, I'm going to show you a question that came from George via Facebook. He's looking for recommendations regarding AI for accounting or bookkeeping process and the problem with finding and hiring employees. We don't need to respond right away unless you want to,
Mhm.
but definitely an example of the type of mechanisms and enhancements that AI can provide. Maybe you can use this as a segue to talk about how we can benefit from AI.
Yeah, so interesting here because there's really two applications here. On the accounting side, it's maybe a little bit more straightforward, um, but with a caveat. So this ChatGPT, LLMs, generative AI, they're not intrinsically number models, right? They're, as I said, NLP. It's more around text. So they're probably not the best solution for, hey, give me an answer for 2 plus 2, even though 2 plus 2 that will do, right? Um, but for accounting and things like that, we're looking at ways of using LLM, but it wouldn't be to do the calculation itself, right? But it's straightforward in the case that you have a model, you have a problem, and you want to start using it. The second part of that question is a little bit trickier, which is the process of hiring and finding the right people. This is where that idea of responsible AI comes more into play. Am I really going to offload a decision that's going to affect a person to an AI, a model? If you do, you have to be very careful and really understand how the model works. Um, how exactly is it deriving that answer that's giving back to you? That's going to, as I said, it's going to affect somebody's life. Somebody's going to be hired or not hired. That's a big responsibility as you as a hiring manager. Um, so
And one thing we have heard a lot about in the context of AI and LLM is the implicit biases
Correct.
that are in the data. So that could get pretty difficult to avoid in the context of using it for hiring decisions, right?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So that wouldn't be an application that I would straight jump at. Now, there are things that the models can help me when I'm doing the hiring. To summarize a resume, for example, to do a search to find certain skills that people might or might not have. But it's always something that me as a human, I want to go back to the source of the data and make sure that that's really the case. Um, so it's not something that I would just use a black box for. But
Mhm.
as in most applications for LLM, we look for the ways of how can, in the process of hiring someone and screening someone, what are the routine tasks where LLMs in AI in general can help and make things easier, but not necessarily replace.
And something you mentioned earlier, I found really interesting this concept that sometimes it takes decades to come up with a new technology or the viable execution of a new technology, right? Technology has been developing for quite some time since Turing in the 1940s and 1950s all the way to 2023. But sometimes it takes a few months or weeks for that technology to really become explosive in terms of its use and its reach. I'm wondering, and obviously no one has a crystal ball, but I'm wondering, based on what you see in terms of the speed of development, what can we anticipate, say, in let's use a 5 year time frame? What can we anticipate would happen in several industries? Let's start with the one in which we participate, which is higher education, academia. Can you tell us a little bit of what you would expect would be the AI applications available in a 5 year time frame in academia?
Yeah. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, so I'll probably be wrong in a couple of months. But one thing's for sure, we are going to see more AI in maybe two or three places. We are going to see more AI in the management um, of education in general, right? And that becomes a little bit tricky, just like hiring, right? But there will be some routine tasks that AI will pick up. We'll see a fair bit of AI, and maybe this is where we'll see most of the AI coming in very soon. Is professors and people in the education sector that actually start embracing AI as a tool to build their courses to stay up to
Mhm.
date. AI is very good at summarizing and distilling information that we're basically bombarded on a daily basis. Um, that becomes a challenge for the educator as much as the student, right? To stay current, to stay up with trends. So that's something where AI is going to play a role. I see AI being developed specifically for education, for helping building those courses, right? A lot of the information that we get is already distilled through AI, but things that are more specific to education itself. Um, I also see AI making its way into the classroom, right? So the same way as the instructor will use AI to build their course, um, instructors and students need to learn how to use AI as part of the learning experience, right? Maybe not unlike the way that we learn how to use a calculator in the classroom, right?
Mhm.
It's not like math went away. It's not like we don't have to learn how to do subtractions, additions, multiplications, right? It's just that now we have a tool. So if what was at the cutting edge before the really difficult stuff becomes easy, how can we take the envelope even a lot further, right? So, and that's what the exciting part of AI, that what we learned a few months ago, a few years ago, that was the really hard part. That becomes the easy.
Hmm.
But now we have the opportunity, we have the time, we have the knowledge to learn something else, to learn even beyond that. Um,
And we are getting quite a few comments from both our LinkedIn and our Facebook audience. I want to show a question that Dave brought up on Facebook. Dave Ortiz says, "Hello, Professor Kopalchuk. I am really interested to learn more of AI in healthcare. My particular interest is in early screening and intervention for cancer. Is there anything site or institutions that are working on this, and can you point them towards?"
yeah, there's a fair bit of AI going into healthcare in general. I'll just point out just the quick disclaimer. When we think of healthcare, we always have to think about the application that we're using AI in. Is that a medical device or it's not a medical device? So there's a little bit more regulation around healthcare that there would
Hmm.
be around some other industries. But the interesting piece is that that hasn't stopped the progress, right? So screening for cancer and things like that, I'm pretty sure everyone has heard of um, tools in AI that have been around for a while around imaging and in detecting cancer through imaging, and some claim to be even better than doctors, right? So that's going to continue progressing. I see generative AI playing a role in that. As I said before, even though it started in the text field, we see it overflowing into imaging, videos, music. So there's going to be a little bit of that. But even the native use of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Bard, and Llama, and all of the other models are making their way into healthcare. A lot of it is the routine things that we do in healthcare, like bookkeeping, keeping documents, being able to search within documents. But another trend has been finding the trends and in the results of how we do we give away medications, different protocols, how different protocols affect different parts of the population. And LLM is being used a lot to mine that data, to query that data, and to do it in a very easy manner. Another thing that LLMs do, and we've heard this a fair bit from both the engineering side and the data science side, is that my skills are no longer required because a doctor can put in a query into a chat and get the data out, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and that's very empowering to those who are not professionally trained as data analysts, data scientists, and whatnot. But it doesn't mean that the data scientists and the data engineer go away, right? They have to build the systems that the doctors and your citizen data scientist would use.
And
But
now that you mentioned that, and going back a little bit to the question on higher ed applications and academia, I would imagine that similar research or search process could prove helpful for academics who are doing research. They might be working on a thesis
correct,
or a
yeah.
book or a particular area of specialization. This really could be a very powerful tool to expedite that search and that research. Correct?
Yeah. So just think about I'm a student. I'm working on my capstone. I remember working on my capstone at CUNY, right? My end of program project. Well, I have to find something novel, something interesting, but there's so much happening out there that just from going from I want to work on my capstone to what is it that I'm going to work on that no one has looked at before, that's a pretty intense process. Using AI, even before I start my AI capstone project,
Hmm.
just using AI to understand, well, this idea that I have, has anyone else thought about it? What papers do we have? The way that we search for publications right now might be just a keyword. Well, that's changing to what is the context of that keyword. So maybe I don't find the word that that I typed in a paper, but the paper itself talks about the idea contained
Hmm.
within that word. So
Or
search is
this
going
could
to be,
also be an interesting tool to summarize content.
yep,
You
yeah,
might have a 500-page long book or document that AI could summarize and highlight the key points as a way for you to determine whether it's worth
yeah,
going in deep into the 500 pages. So that could
correct.
also be an interesting way to do
Yeah,
research.
and another point is similarity. So AI in the last few months have become very good at summarizing, and has become very good at finding things that are similar. So
Yeah.
I could have 20 papers, like, okay, tell me which ones are similar, and I concentrate on a summary of just those instead of having to go through the
Of
entire book.
course. Now, I have another question from George, and this is interesting. He's asking the top sectors that AI would be used first are, and he points education as one, but then a question mark for two and three, and maybe not in that particular order. But if you can share your thoughts in terms of what other sectors would be most impacted by AI.
Yeah, well, we're seeing AI across the board, but yeah, education, there's a lot of uses there. Others, healthcare, which was mentioned before, finance, we see a fair bit of going into uh, finance, or a lot of us spending a fair bit of time there. Uh,
Hmm.
but as I said, it's really across the board. Energy has a lot of applications. Things like nonprofit are also using AI, which is interesting because for nonprofits, they don't have the deep pockets that some other industries have, and AI is coming to a place where um, you don't. There's affordable ways of accessing it, right? And cloud technologies have helped with that. But these large language models are not cheap. So for you to stand them up yourself, well, nonprofit, it becomes tricky, right? But we see even industries like that doing a fair bit.
Right.
Retail is another one where we see a lot of applications.
So, Peter, as usually happens, it's already 9:27. This half hour has gone by so quickly, and we're just scratching the surface. So we definitely will need to have a follow-up conversation. But I would imagine that our audience would be interested in learning more about you, about your work. So I'm gonna click and post on the screen a link to your Medium feed, Peter M. Kowalczuk, and you can find some essays, some further information on the research you're doing or your perspective on AI there. Also, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is your recommendation? Best way to get a hold of you if anyone wants to follow up?
Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn and send
Okay.
me a direct message.
I
Yep.
think that is the LinkedIn link,
Mhm.
right? So I imagine there are not many Peter Kowalczuks in on LinkedIn, so
I
it's
think there's
probably
less than a handful of us out there. Yeah.
very very good, very good, excellent. So before we go, I always like to get a sense for, in the context of our students, if you had any recommendation, say you are a recent high school grad or you're in the middle of your bachelor's degree or your academic journey, any thoughts as to what should a student consider in terms of studying, as we know that AI is going to affect the workplace prospectively. It's already affecting it, but prospectively even more. So any thoughts or recommendations for our
Yeah, the biggest one is embrace the change.
Mhm.
It really doesn't matter if you're wanting to pursue a career in complete your education in something that's specific to AI, or even if it's outside of AI. I can't think of anywhere where you won't see AI. So
Mhm.
pretty much any program, even if it's not AI specific, be prepared to learn about AI. And a lot of that could be as a user. As I said before, we've got this idea of citizens that know how to use the tools, right? You don't have to be a mathematician to know how to use a calculator. I'm pretty sure you
Mhm.
use one almost daily, right? Same thing with AI. So embrace that. If you are going into the field of information technology, AI specific, um, make sure you build a base. Things like what we teach at CUNY,
Mhm.
system design, programming. You still want to learn how to do that basic code, even though you're going to have a tool that's going to help you accelerate the rate at which you generate code eventually. You still want to build that base.
And
And
there's one concept, Peter, that is becoming more and more um, publicized, which is the concept of prompt engineering.
yeah,
Some folks are saying, "Hey, that's the career of the future." I wouldn't go that far, but certainly it's something that most students and faculty and staff, everyone really, should be a little bit more familiar with.
yeah, there will be new things that are going to be added to everyone's curriculum, and prompt engineering might be one of them, right?
Right.
It's we do have people that dedicate most of their day to generating prompts, and we have a lot of engineers that do more traditional coding to make prompt engineering a lot
Hmm.
easier. Um, One thing to keep in mind is we are on the upswing. Models are changing a lot. When a model changes, the prompts change a little bit with them, right? We're going to
Okay.
reach a plateau where we're going to have more model specific to each thing, and that prompt engineering will become a little bit more stable. But yeah, it's one of those things, and I wouldn't be surprised that we'll have something in a couple of months, some other type of engineering
Yeah. Yeah.
that will be the new next career or the next degree to have.
That might be a good topic for our that might be a good topic for our follow-up conversation, Peter.
Sure.
The evolution of prompt engineering and how it's becoming more specific to the tool or the platform, so or the language. So thank you again. Unfortunately we are out of time, but Peter, this has been fantastic. I think we have learned a lot today, and much more to come. So congratulations on your work, on your classes. Best of luck to you and your students, and we look forward to a follow-up discussion. So again, thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day and rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye.